I was serving with the British Army. So I was a lieutenant in the British military, and I was in the UK one day. I wasn't abroad, wasn't doing anything exciting, but I was training in the gym, and over the course of about 15 minutes, I had a brain bleed, which was caused by a burst blood vessel in my head. And what that did was it completely paralyzed me from the neck down on my left-hand side. So you could draw a line down the middle of my body, and the right half worked and the left half did not work at all. Over the course of the next sort of 2.5 years, I was going through rehab with the British military. So I was extremely fortunate to be, sort of 5 days a week, 9 until 5 p.m. full-time job, getting better and learning how to walk again, learning how to use my left arm again, and doing all of that good stuff. But the rehab was never going to be perfect. I still walk with quite a significant limp, and basically the higher up on my body you go, the better things get. This gives you an idea of kind of the big picture routing. So the orange arrow, or the orange line that you can see with the aeroplanes on the left-hand side of the screen, I flew from Punta Arenas, which is the very, very southern tip of Chile, flew into Union Glacier on the 19th of November. And Union Glacier is a big logistics base. There is, sort of tent village there. There's a nice sort of big semi-permanent tent, which, you have all your food in, etc. There are showers, toilets, all of that good stuff. So Union Glacier is a big logistical base in Antarctica. The temperatures itself down on Antarctica, when I say ambient, what I mean is without wind. So if there was no wind at all, the ambient temperature is just what it would be outside. And that fluctuated significantly. So that was going from roughly 0 degrees to roughly -40, dependent on where you were, how near sea level you were. And as you get higher, things get colder because the air gets a bit thinner. So the ambient temperatures were quite cold to start with. When you add wind speed to that, they can get very cold very quickly, and they can become pretty dangerous quite quickly. I don't know if the resolution is good enough, but I still have some windburn scars on my face. That is literally just where it's sort of windy enough that things get very cold very quickly, and the outer layer of your skin starts freezing. Moving on, this is a little bit more detail of my route, and as you can see, it's basically two long straight lines. So of the 911 kilometers that I skied, that included roughly 3,000 meters of elevation gain as well. So we'll refer to it as vertical gain. In terms of the energy that I was eating every day, I was eating roughly 5,800 calories of food every day. And to put that in perspective, the standard recommended allowance for an adult in the UK is somewhere between 1,800 and 2,000 calories. So I was eating roughly 3 times what a fully grown man is recommended to eat of a day. The reason for that is that due to a combination of the sheer work required to travel sort of 20 to 22.5 kilometers per day, dragging a sledge that weighed more than I did most of the time, and also to allow your body to actually just heat itself in those extreme temperatures, I was actually burning about 7,800 calories per day. So roughly 4 times the recommended daily allowance of an adult. So actually over the course of this trip, over the 46 days that I was out on the ice, I actually lost 10 kilograms of body weight. This is what the food looked like. And that's also my cooking setup in the background as well. So you can see there that I've got a stove with my kettle on top of it. That kettle would melt snow to make about 3 liters of water at one time. And that's a liquid fuel stove. For those of you who've been camping, you've likely used gas to fire your stoves before. Down in Antarctica, you use liquid fuel, so Coleman fuel, because gas actually starts to freeze at those temperatures, becomes very clumpy, and doesn't work. So this stove would melt me 3 liters of water in roughly an hour. and you can see below it all the food that I was eating of a day. This was literally everything that I had to eat in a day. That is, with the exception of the food, that is all of the kit I took with me for the entire trip. So you can see their variety of sort of tent, clothing, cooking equipment, and bedding. But that is literally everything I had. So roughly sort of 30 kilograms worth of kit there. So not a huge amount of kit to last me for nearly 50 days on the ice. And that's sort of what it looks like when it's deployed. So this was about 350 kilometers into the trip. You can just about see the Thiel Mountains in the background. So that's my tent set up, and that's my polk out on the ice, just getting ready to be emptied with my skis in the background. And then finally, this is a bit of an insight into what my sort of house looked like for nearly 46 days. You've already seen the cook pot in the bottom right-hand corner, and then, a nice neat layout in the tent. You don't have a huge amount of space in there. What you can see in front of me is very simply exactly what it looks like. It is a compass that's been strapped to a bit of plastic. Now, that bit of plastic basically straps itself around my neck and around my chest, and you walk like that the whole time. So that compass I wore for 46 days, and it is pretty much the only means of navigating whilst you're actually moving at the same time. If you try to use an electronic GPS, what happens is the fluid in the batteries, which is what holds the charge, that fluid actually freezes at those temperatures. So electronic devices lose charge pretty much straight away in extreme cold. So there was no option to use electronic GPS as a primary means of navigation. I had one. In fact, I had two in case one of them broke. So I had GPS devices to allow me to make sure that I was moving in the right direction. But primarily, I was walking on a bearing. You can see here that I'm actually walking due south at this point. I was walking at 180 degrees. So this is a photo of me at the geographic South Pole. Now, there are two different poles when you actually get to the South Pole. There is the ceremonial pole and the geographic South Pole. Kind of from an explorer's point of view, the geographic South Pole is the important one because it's the actual South Pole. And it actually, what I sort of was aware of, but hadn't been completely briefed on before I went down there, is that this actually moves every year. So I arrived at the South Pole on the 6th of January. 5 days earlier, that pole had been moved 3 inches because that's how the Earth sort of changes throughout the throughout the year. And then finally, this is the ceremonial South Pole. So the one that sort of people recognize, which is sort of a metallic globe stuck on top of a barber's pole. And obviously, being British, I'm festooned in Union Jacks. So that sort of ceremonial pole was very nice to get to. But I think, from my perspective, and something which certainly I have taken from this trip and would, encourage all of you to sort of consider, certainly, it was quite a difficult journey. And as Joe mentioned right at the start, did involve a significant amount of resilience, not only throughout the course of the journey, but actually the really difficult part about this was the sort of 5 years of working really hard, training really hard at home that it took to actually get to Antarctica in the first place. And from my perspective, a significant aspect of that was due to having this dream, this big ambition to become the first ever disabled person to get to the South Pole solo and unsupported. And having the confidence that was going to happen if I made the right plan and approached the whole campaign in the right manner. So one of the things that I would certainly encourage of you is, do have big ambitions. Don't be put off of your dreams by people telling you they're not achievable,